"You're not the look we're going for." That was all they said. No explanation, no apology, no second chance. Tiana James stood frozen in the doorway of the downtown LA studio, her worn leather portfolio shaking slightly in her hands. Her heart pounded so loud it muffled everything around her. She had spent years preparing for this moment, perfecting her walk, building a clean, confident portfolio, and training herself to speak with grace and courage in interviews. And yet, none of it mattered. The second she walked into the room, the atmosphere changed. Their eyes scanned her up and down, and the fake smiles disappeared. Within seconds, they had already decided. She didn't fit. Why? Because her skin was too dark. From the moment she turned 14, Tiana knew what she wanted: to model. Growing up in the Bronx, she would flip through fashion magazines in the grocery store, staring at the women who seemed to float off the pages. She practiced poses in her bedroom mirror, mimicked runway walks with old heels, and studied photography to understand how light could transform a face. Her mom supported her dream with every dollar she could spare. "They may not see it now," she'd always say, "but one day they'll see what I see." But even with all that love behind her, the world didn't always love her back. In her early gigs, photographers would often ask her to lighten her makeup. Stylists would avoid working with her natural hair, calling it too much to handle. And casting agents, though friendly at first, would shift in tone as soon as she walked in. Still, she pushed through. She believed if she kept showing up, someone would finally give her a real shot. But this time, this audition, it was supposed to be different. This brand had claimed to celebrate diversity and bold beauty. They ran ads featuring models of every size and shape. They had even spoken about supporting Black creators. So when Tiana got the call back, she truly believed this could be it. This was the chance she'd been waiting for. But as she stood in that doorway, the casting director barely looked up from her clipboard. One of the assistants whispered something under their breath and laughed. Tiana knew what was coming before it was even said. "You're not the look we're going for." It wasn't just rejection, it was dismissal, and it burned. Outside the building, she sank onto a bench and stared at the sidewalk, fighting back tears. Not because of the rejection, she'd faced plenty of those, but because of the lie. The lie that diversity only meant some kinds of Black, that representation only worked when it fit a marketable mold. That beauty still had an invisible border she couldn't cross. A stranger passed by and asked if she was okay. Tiana smiled politely and nodded, hiding the storm inside. But in that moment, something shifted in her heart. She realized she didn't need their permission to feel worthy. She didn't need to be chosen by them to be seen. She was tired of being quiet, tired of accepting silence as the only answer. Later that night, she posted her experience on social media, not in anger, but in truth. "I was told today that I'm not the look." Again, to every girl who's been made to feel invisible because of her skin, please know you are not the problem. The system is, and I will not stay quiet anymore. The post exploded. Within days, thousands shared their own stories. Girls from New York to Nigeria sent DMs thanking her for speaking out, and slowly, fashion pages began reaching out. Real ones this time. The kind that weren't afraid of deep tones, bold features, and real representation. Tiana didn't just get noticed, she became a voice. A voice for every young girl who had ever been told she was too dark or too different. A voice that didn't wait for permission anymore. Because the truth is, her skin wasn't the reason she didn't belong. It was the reason she stood out. Tiana was born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia. A city rich with culture and pride, yet still marked by the lingering shadows of discrimination. From a young age, she was no stranger to challenges. Her mother worked 2 exhausting jobs just to keep food on the table and clothes on Tiana's back, while her father, a passionate jazz musician, filled their small apartment with music, wisdom, and deep love for their heritage. He would often sit with her on the porch after school, plucking soft melodies from his saxophone and telling her stories of Black excellence, resilience, and beauty. From him, she learned that her skin was not a burden, but a blessing, something to carry with pride, not shame. But while Tiana was taught self-love at home, the world outside wasn't always so kind. She vividly remembered her early school days when kids whispered behind her back, or worse, said it out loud. "She's too dark to be pretty." Those words stung deeper than any physical pain. They weren't just insults, they were judgments passed on something she had no control over. It wasn't just the students either. Even some teachers seemed to favor lighter-skinned kids. Tiana noticed how they got more compliments, more attention, and even more leniency. But through it all, her mother remained her strongest support. On the worst days, when Tiana came home crying, her mom would sit her down, hold her chin up, and say, "Baby, you're not too dark, they're just too blind to see beauty." That one sentence became Tiana's armor. Every time she heard a hurtful comment, she would repeat her mother's words in her head, like a mantra. Over time, she didn't just endure, she started to thrive. She became obsessed with fashion, not the glossy surface kind, but the artistry behind it. She'd cut up old magazines, study the way models posed, practiced walking like them in front of the mirror for hours. At 19, she signed with a small but reputable modeling agency in Atlanta. It was a slow start, filled with rejection emails, unreturned calls, and auditions that led nowhere. But Tiana wasn't the type to give up. She worked twice as hard as everyone else. She studied runway shows late into the night, watched tutorials, perfected her facial expressions, and even saved every dollar she could to afford a professional photo shoot for her portfolio. Her dedication was unwavering because she believed she had something real to offer. And finally, after 2 years of relentless hustle, her phone buzzed with an opportunity that made her heart skip a beat. A casting call from a major beauty brand based in New York. This was no small gig. It was the kind of opportunity that could change her entire life. They wanted her to come for an in-person casting session. Tiana couldn't believe her eyes. She screamed so loud her neighbors probably heard. She jumped up and down in her tiny apartment, clutching her phone like it was a golden ticket. This was it. All her hard work, all the tears, all the nights she wondered if she was good enough, it was finally paying off. She packed her suitcase carefully, choosing outfits that made her feel confident. She rehearsed her walk in front of her cracked mirror one last time. Her mother, now older and slower but just as proud, hugged her tightly at the bus station and whispered, "Go show them what beauty really looks like." With hope in her chest and dreams in her suitcase, Tiana boarded the bus to New York, unaware that the biggest test of her spirit still lay ahead. She was ready. Completely ready. Tiana had spent hours preparing for this interview. Her resume was sharp, her portfolio impressive, and her confidence steady. She knew she had worked harder than most, overcome more than many, and carried herself with a quiet dignity that couldn't be ignored. That morning, she carefully styled her hair into a neat bun, chose a navy blue blazer that made her look bold but professional, and added just a touch of makeup, not to impress, but to feel her best. She arrived 20 minutes early, as always. She smiled at the receptionist, exchanged polite greetings, and waited patiently to be called in. But the moment she stepped into the interview room, the energy shifted. The room went oddly quiet. 3 interviewers, 2 men and 1 woman, sat behind a long white table, expressionless. Their eyes scanned her once, then returned to the stack of resumes like she was just a name on a page. They didn't ask her how she was. They didn't seem interested in small talk. One of the men barely looked up. The woman flipped through Tiana's portfolio with cold fingers and blank eyes. Then came the whispers. One leaned in and murmured something to the other. A side glance, a short nod. It wasn't subtle, but it was fast. Tiana's heart sank just a little. Still she smiled. Still she hoped. And then one of them closed the folder and said it. "Sorry, you're not the look we're aiming for." At first she thought she misheard. What did that mean? Not the look? She tried to ask politely, "May I ask what you're looking for?" And that's when the woman, who had been the quietest of the 3, shifted uncomfortably in her seat. She looked at Tiana, then at the other 2, then back at Tiana. Her voice was low, but her words were sharp enough to cut. "We're looking for a lighter tone, something that pops more on camera." Tiana froze. She wanted to ask again to make sure she understood, but deep down, she knew she had heard exactly what she thought. This wasn't about qualifications. This wasn't about personality, experience, or even the role. It was about her skin, her beautiful deep brown skin that she had learned to love, her skin that had carried generations of strength, pride, and power. In that moment, it became a reason to dismiss her, to silence her, to shut a door that should have never been closed. Tiana gathered her things with trembling hands. She thanked them with the same grace she had entered with, and she walked out of that room without letting them see her cry. But later, when she sat down with us, when she told her story in her own words, you could feel the quiet fire in her voice. It wasn't about talent, she said. It wasn't about skills. It was about my skin. And they didn't even try to hide it. Her eyes didn't blink. Her hands didn't shake this time. Because for the first time, she wasn't asking for permission to speak. She was demanding to be heard. This story isn't rare. What Tiana faced happened silently every day, behind office doors, inside casting rooms, during interviews that turned cold in seconds. It's not always said aloud, but it's always felt. A glance, a tone, a rejection wrapped in politeness. But this time, it wasn't wrapped in anything. They said it to her face. And while most would break, Tiana did the opposite. She stood taller. She shared her truth. And now her voice, her strong, unshaken voice, is echoing beyond that room, reaching millions who need to hear it. Because this is not just her story. It's a reflection of a deeper problem. And maybe, just maybe, if enough people hear her, see her, and believe her, things might begin to change. Tiana didn't want to stay silent. That night, after wiping off her makeup and sitting alone in her small bedroom, she stared at her phone for a long moment. Her eyes were still red from crying, but something inside her had shifted. A fire had been lit. She pressed record, no filters, no lights, just her voice trembling but strong.
Today, she began, I was rejected because of my skin, because I was too dark. Her voice cracked slightly. And if I stay quiet, they'll keep doing this to girls like me. She looked straight into the camera, her expression raw and honest. She didn't try to sound perfect. She didn't hide her pain. That made it even more powerful. The video was less than 2 minutes long, but it captured something real, something so many people had felt but never said out loud. She uploaded it to her socials with the caption, "This is my truth, enough is enough." Then she set her phone down, curled into bed, and cried herself to sleep, not knowing her life was about to change forever. By the time Tiana woke up the next morning, her phone had exploded. Hundreds of notifications, thousands of shares. Her video had gone viral overnight. People from all over the world were watching, commenting, and resharing her words. The number of views kept climbing every second. Her DMs were overflowing, but what struck her the most were the comments. So many girls, especially young black girls, were writing things like, "This happened to me too," and "I thought I was the only one." Some even said, "Thank you for saying this. I finally feel seen." Tiana sat there in shock. Her truth had touched a nerve. It had opened a wound that many people were quietly carrying. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel alone, and neither did they. It didn't stop there. Celebrities started reposting the video. Famous actresses, models, even some industry insiders. One well-known singer wrote, "It's 2025. Why are we still having this conversation?" Another fashion icon commented, "Dark skin is beautiful. Tiana, we see you. We hear you." The more people saw the video, the more the conversation grew. News outlets picked up the story. Tiana was asked to appear on talk shows and speak about colorism, beauty standards, and her experience in the modeling world. She was nervous at first, but she said yes, because she realized her story wasn't just hers anymore. It belonged to every girl who had ever been made to feel less than because of her skin. Suddenly, Tiana wasn't just a model. She was a voice, a symbol, a movement. People started using the hashtag #TooDarkForWho, inspired by her story. Girls began posting their own stories, selfies, and videos, owning their skin tone with pride. What started as rejection had now turned into a wave of empowerment. Tiana was flooded with messages of gratitude from mothers, teachers, and even young boys, saying her courage had changed their thinking. She didn't just challenge the modeling industry. She challenged the world to see beauty differently. She proved that silence feeds injustice, but truth breaks it. Through it all, Tiana remained grounded. She still lived in the same apartment, still had the same circle of friends. But now, when she walked down the street, strangers smiled at her. Young girls waved and whispered, "That's her." She was invited to speak at schools, events, and even fashion panels. Not because of how she looked, but because of what she stood for. And every time someone asked her what gave her the courage to speak up, she simply said, "Because someone had to." Her voice, once overlooked, was now leading the way. And in doing so, she lit the path for thousands of others to follow. Tiana's story is not just her own. It represents the pain and rejection that many people silently endure simply because of the color of their skin. In today's world where diversity is often showcased as a marketing buzzword, the reality behind the scenes is still painfully narrow. Major fashion houses and casting agencies post inclusive slogans and hashtags, but when it comes time to select a face, a body, or a voice to represent their brand, they often revert to the same old standards. Lighter skin, Eurocentric features, and familiar faces. For women like Tiana, this silent bias feels like an invisible wall. It doesn't say, "You're not talented," or "You're not beautiful." It whispers something more harmful. "You're not what we want." And that hurts deeper than an outright insult. It chips away at confidence, at identity, at hope. But Tiana didn't allow that rejection to define her. She took the pain and transformed it into purpose. When she launched her platform, Shade Beautiful, it wasn't just another online portfolio. It was a message to the industry and to the world that beauty doesn't come in just one shade. Her goal wasn't just to post pretty pictures of herself. She started scouting other underrepresented models, dark-skinned girls who had never seen someone who looked like them on a billboard or runway. She helped them with headshots, taught them how to pose, how to walk, how to own the camera. And slowly, something started to shift. Not in the industry, not yet, but in the hearts of those women. They started to believe in their worth. They started to understand that their skin wasn't something to hide, but something to highlight. "When your skin tone becomes a reason to reject your talent," Tiana once said during an interview, "that's not preference, that's prejudice." Her words echoed online, shared by thousands who had felt the sting of that same rejection. She didn't call for pity, she called for change, and she lived that change. Bookings began to come in. Not because agencies had suddenly become more open-minded, but because people outside the system started building their own spaces. Photographers, stylists, and indie brands wanted authenticity, and Tiana brought that in waves. She modeled for campaigns focused on real beauty, appeared in documentaries, and spoke on panels about representation. And all of this, not because someone gave her a chance, but because she stopped waiting for permission. Her story reminds us that the fight against colorism isn't over. It shows that while we've made progress in talking about inclusion, we still fall short when it comes to action. There are still girls growing up believing that lighter means better. Still boys thinking they're not marketable enough for success. Still parents unknowingly passing down harmful ideals about beauty. And that's why stories like Tiana's need to be heard, not just to inspire, but to educate. Because when one person breaks the mold, they give others the courage to do the same. They say, "You are not alone." Today, Shade Beautiful is more than a platform. It's a movement. And Tiana? She's more than a model now. She's a symbol of resistance, of strength, of beauty redefined. She didn't just overcome rejection. She rewrote what it means to be seen. Her journey is a reminder to all of us that while the world might be unfair, especially to those who don't fit its narrow lens of beauty, change is possible. Not just in headlines or hashtags, but in real lives, real faces, and real futures. Because the truth is simple, every shade is beautiful. And the more we celebrate that, the closer we get to a world where no one gets rejected for the skin they're born in. Have you or someone you know faced this kind of bias? Share your story in the comments. Let's bring light to every shade. Don't forget to subscribe to Unfair to Blacks for more powerful real-life stories. Your voice matters.